Okay, good afternoon, everybody. How you guys doing? Sorry for the late schedule today. Had a conflict in my schedule. So we're going to get into it today. Welcome to Sage Talk. This is your host, Lee. And today I want to talk about it's really a topic for the guys, of course, but ladies, you're welcome to participate in any way. We want to talk about the activities that we as men get into when we deal with women. And the topic is all coochie ain't good coochie, and men needing to raise their standards. But before I go into the topic of today, I want to kind of give a brief commentary on the Fox Soul, what I would call the entrapment with Dr. Umar this past week. The big takeaway for me, particularly as it pertains to men from the Fox Soul situation, if you are a heterosexual man, considering the climate that we're in today, it's quite possible that we can encounter trans women who in some cases may have lived a life longer as a female than as a male. And potentially, Dwayne Wade's son, he started at what age? 8, 9? So by the time he's 20, 22, 23 years old, he would have been living a life more in the female-centric mind. And I'm not sure if he's taking hormone blockers and things like that to suppress puberty for him as a male, which obviously will affect his development, his growth, his structure. It will definitely impede him from potentially ever having children if he decides to switch back at some point. Salute to the gang, everybody here. Appreciate you guys checking in. But the big argument or the body augmentation that tends to happen when boys go through the transition to become females and when they have lived a life considerably for some time as a female, the nuances of females, the gestures, the mannerisms, things which are commonly associated with female behavior, they become blurred. Not so much for them, but for men, heterosexual men. And considering the improvements today with regard to makeup and just general appearances, the lines between identifying who is a natural born female and a transition female will become more and more difficult as time goes by. Particularly when we do a lot of communicating in a virtual space. Right now on YouTube and other venues, but the metaverse is right around the corner. Knowing whether or not the person that you are talking to was born a female or was not born a female, it's going to be challenging. So I would say as heterosexual men, When we engage women, it's necessary, vital, I would say, for us to use probative language to be able to elicit whether or not that individual is an actual female or was born a female, as opposed to being a transition female. And obviously, you want to develop a tactical way in which you communicate. You don't want to come off aggressive. You don't want to come off threatening. You don't want to come off insulting. And you definitely don't want to come off as though you're phobic in some way. But at the same time, you need to be able to assess what gender are you speaking to, literally. Now, in the common speak today, we know there's such a thing as gender expression. And gender expression is fluid. Gender expression is fluid. But your actual gender is not. So whether if you're a male or if you're a female, that's your born gender. But in today's world, someone could determine that they want to express themselves in a much different way. And when someone is expressing a gender that is not natural to how they were born, as a heterosexual man, you need to know what you're encountering. And one of the things I would say when you're trying to probe, to define or determine if the person is actually a female, because in this time and age, your eyes can play tricks on you, no doubt. What you see is not always what you get. So, for example, as you engage in a conversation, let's say, one of the key things I think, and this is just my opinion, but I think depending on your environment, professional or social, you can tend to determine how you want to insert your probative language to determine who you're actually speaking with. How do you normally address someone when you would like to know whether that person is actually a born female, presenting their gender as female? Well, one of the things that I think the trans community has really pushed forth, and I think in some cases the heterosexual community has kind of pushed back against that. But I think bringing up the subject of a person's pronoun and how they would prefer to be referred to, what pronoun should I use when referring to you? And they might say, well, what do you mean? And you can say, well, she, her, or how do you prefer to be addressed? And I think a good way of asking a person what's their pronoun is a segue for you to get to the bottom line, for you to get to know whether or not they're actually what you see. You can easily say, well, I mean, did you transition, or were you always, were you born a female, or did you transition at some point in your life? And obviously that can bring up a conversation. They may ask you, well, why do you ask? Whatnot, whatnot. But I think it's important for us to be deliberate in our communication, because I think it's clear that the differences between men and women and their parent, I guess what we call the battle between the sexes, it doesn't seem to be subsiding. And I think women are going to fight all the way to the end. And if anyone have seen the Fox Soul interview with Dr. Umar, you know, in the beginning, I myself thought, hey, is that a real woman? I wasn't sure. But the fact that they did not brief him, either in the back chat, the host of the show, I think that was very disingenuous. And I think more and more people will look to set up some brothers. And more than just, I would say, a conversation. We don't live in a time where we can assume and make assumptions just by what we see, because assumptions can be completely wrong. You know, the old saying, when you assume, you make a fool out of you and me, is more literal than figuratively. I think one of the terrible things that this bring forth as straight men, it's important that we protect ourselves, that we protect and guard our self-image, because we know that some people will not always volunteer information for transparency's sake, so you can speak from a knowledgeable place, knowing the environment that you're in. As you guys come on into the stream, hit the like button. Let's bring the likes up, guys. So I just wanted to kind of drop that as a PSA for the men out there. I mean, I'm not sure. I saw the embarrassment of it, but I'm looking at it from a more deeper standpoint, where it's one thing where you can be set up as a man and a woman or a trans woman may not disclose who they're speaking with, because we know that trans women and or gay men prefer straight men. And I remember back a few years ago, you know, even Cardi B said when she used to set guys up, she used to, you know, they used to go to the hotel and she would drug them. And then she'll switch up and have a trans woman come in and turn guys out, mess their head up. So they may be, you know, natural women who may look to set up heterosexual men with trans women. So I think, you know, understanding the dynamics of our society and the way people are moving, You can't underestimate anyone. And you have to keep your wits about you, whether you're in a virtual space or you in physical proximity in a meeting, or particularly when you're socializing, because socializing can present more damaging encounters. One, you could be videoed, which could definitely present a problem at some point. And in other cases, you could be just set up. So don't be afraid as men to bring the conversation up to protect yourself. You can't be concerned about maybe someone feeling slightly offended, as long as you take enough caution to be courteous and professional in your conversation and you're not being rude. It's a necessary conversation to have. I also want to talk about, for men, having standards. Standards and conduct of behavior. These things are real important. How one presents themselves, yourself, your name, your self-image, your brand, your family, and most importantly, how members of your family represents the family name. And there's a reason why I'm going to touch on this. I'm going to bring up a video in a minute. But one of the things that have damaged us as a Black community, and particularly as Black men, is the destruction of family and the importance of the family name, something that once meant something to us as a people. For many of us, we believe just because we have money, we are deserving of certain things. But I say, no, not always. There are still many people who believe that your reputation precedes you. And what some of us, many of us, don't realize is that there are many families who understand that standards and reputations speaks volumes for who you are, and more importantly, who your family is. What's the name behind the person? One of the things I've noticed is that we've strayed away from a good family name, families that have reputation. And living a life with standards and living up to a standard is something that it seemed like very few people concern themselves with. How you present yourself. We see that so often with sisters when they're traveling, going to the airport, when they go on different lives. You know, they have these shower caps, hair bonnets on their head, and they think that's perfectly fine. Your image, and more importantly, how you represent yourself and your family, your family's name, that's your brand. I mean, we talk about branding from a business standpoint, but we rarely ever talk about it from where it really starts. Your brand begins with you. And let me see, I'm going to go ahead and drop a video in right now because I want you guys to check this out, and then we'll come back and I'll continue. Okay. Give me a second. Bear with me a minute, guys. Okay, what's going on? Oh, I've frozen. The hell? Okay. How is it my stream is freezing? Cancel. Okay, I apologize for that. Give me 1 second. Okay, share screen. Chrome tab. Let me know in the chat if you guys can see the screen. Can you guys see? Okay. Okay. Let's see what's going on. Can you guys see? Okay. Okay. Can you guys see? Okay. Got a lot of echo going on. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and play this quick video. It's just about 2 minutes, but it's talking about having standards. Okay, so okay, I'm going to try it one more time, and if not, then just going to move on. Bear with me a second. I'm not sure why my screen is freezing. Okay. They are all on a blacklist of people that Ferrari no longer sells. The trio have insulted Ferrari because they didn't treat the cars with the necessary respect. Bieber, for example, repainted. I'm going to start it. I'm going to start it over so you guys get it right from the beginning. Justin Bieber, Kim Kardashian, and Floyd Mayweather are no longer allowed to buy a used Ferrari. They are all on the blacklist of people that Ferrari no longer sells. The trio have insulted Ferrari because they didn't treat the cars with the necessary respect. Bieber, for example, repainted his Ferrari, put a rear spoiler on it, and carelessly left on some Thank you for that. Okay, I apologize. I didn't want a feedback, so I muted my mic. Thanks. As I was saying, the reason why those three individuals have been blacklisted is simple. Ferrari has a brand. They have a family name. And they want respect on that name. And sometimes you have to take personal sacrifices to achieve a certain level. And you may have to distance yourself from certain individuals. In this case, for them, it was business. Justin Bieber, because he modified the vehicle. Kim Kardashian, because of some other reason. And Floyd Mayweather, simply because he changes vehicles too often, and their policy is that you can't sell it before a year. Because maintaining a high market value for some products means exclusivity. It's not always easy to acquire. And I think that as men and Black men, as we start to grow in terms of our presence in America, our image in America, and with passport, you guys can't hear me? Put a 1 in the chat if you guys can hear me. Can you hear me? I see, what's that, Donkey? Put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me, guys. Okay, cool. Do you want me to start over from where I left off at the video, or did you guys pick up what I was saying at that time? Okay, cool. As I was saying, to maintain a high standard, there are sacrifices individuals have to make. Okay, Natural Express. Natural Express, you're saying you didn't hear me from where the video left off, correct? All right, so I'll restate my comments. Appreciate that, guys. Having a standard requires you to make certain sacrifice. And the purpose of the video, when I selected Ferrari, and the three individuals that was cited in their commentary, is because though these people are wealthy, they have a certain level of influence globally, Ferrari still has a standard as to how they want to be represented. And if I may tie it back to your family name, see, when we talk about legacy, legacy is not just money. Legacy is not just having houses or even a business. The legacy goes first by your name, the standard that you establish. And Ferrari has built a name and a brand. And in doing so, they have certain requirements when someone purchases one of their vehicles. And if the individuals, no matter how wealthy they may be, break those codes, sometimes they have to sacrifice. They have to sacrifice doing business with those individuals, even though they know it's revenue, but to maintain their brand and the exclusivity for the brand makes it such an option for those who can afford it to be able to get one. Because number one, though you may decide that you want to buy a Ferrari, they choose you. From all the people that go on their lists to purchase their vehicles, they make the final decision as to who will be a buyer. And these three individuals, Justin Bieber, because he modified the car, that's part of their policy. You can't modify the vehicle. I don't remember the reason, Kim Kardashian, but I think it has something to do with her behavior. And then Floyd Mayweather, because he sold the car too early. Can't resell the car in less than a year. That's part of exclusivity. So as a company, they set a standard for themselves and for their vehicles and for their company. And those who are owners of their vehicles must maintain the standards that they have set as part of the brand, as a luxury brand, to keep it exclusive. And part of the commentary, which I ended the video a little bit too soon, I believe, but what it noted was that out of all of the other luxury brand competition, it outsells them by the most. During the pandemic, they outsold everybody else. And they've got the highest profit margin in the industry. Thanks, Natural Express. 50 Cent also? Yeah, he wasn't featured in this particular clip. But I want to kind of bring this back to us as Black men. And as we are starting to make our mark, not only in the US, but brothers are starting to go global, business wise, some for relationships and other things. But us as Black men, what type of image are we going to have? As I was saying, your branding, your image, that begins before you own your first LLC, your first C Corp or S Corp. It begins with your sole proprietorship. It starts with you. It starts with your name. Like we say in the hood, put some respect on my name. But it goes beyond just the hood. The one thing I think when we talk about legacy and we talk about your brand, your image, the one thing that is immortal is your family name. And because of what happened to us in American slavery and the losing of our name and our history, that have caused some significant damage. But it's not a damage that is beyond repair. Why? Because we're still here and we're thriving and we're succeeding. So we can repair and create whatever image and set whatever standard we want to have for ourselves as successful and fastly becoming powerful, influential Black men, not only in the manosphere space, but in the 3D world as well. Now, I'm sure many of you are pondering, what does standards have to do with clapping cheeks and coochie? It has a lot. And I will say this, as men, We have civilized ourselves and the society to a standard that is above all other mammals that exist on this planet. But the most animalistic nature in all mammals is the act of sex, procreation. Many men who are average or below average usually find themselves in a situation where they need to wait to get a woman. Usually, a woman who is less in the quality of the gene pool, beauty, intelligence, and so forth. And that applies both ways, both men and women. But it applies more so to the man because it's the woman that, in the end, make the selection of who they're going to open their legs to. But the majority of men usually settle for what they can get, meaning they sacrifice a quality woman because they would rather have some pleasure as opposed to no pleasure, and they definitely want to procreate. We know that there's a choosing scale for females. I mean, that's something that's well talked about in this part of the manosphere. But when you've reached a certain level as a man in society, in your life, with regard to your career, personal success, achievements, and even financial rewards, the tables turn. And you, as the man, can set the standard for the woman that you want both to have pleasure with and, in cases where you want to marry and have a family, who you want to procreate with. And it goes as far as not only sexual, but once you become the type of man where you can really be selective, you need to be able to exercise that selection with your circle, the people you keep around you, because those people also reflect on you. I remember when I was a kid, and probably some of you, your parents used to say, don't hang out with so and so. Because who you socialize with, who you keep as a close circle of friends or associate, their behavior reflects on you as part of the crew. Respectfully, for both personally and business, pleasure and entertainment, the higher as a man you start to climb the circle, the greater the need to set your standards and to limit the size of your circle. When you're not stressed, for sex, when you're not stressed for the companionship of a woman, you have control over your beastly nature. You just don't run up a body count because you can. You're very selective with the woman you choose because that selection can sometimes break you or make you. Obviously, not every man have selectability, but there's always a percentage of men on the earth that have that selectability. Some men, get the genetic ticket where they got the height, they got the looks, they got the physique. And they may even, because of that, have some talent that can help them stratosphere up to the heights that can bring them great success and kind of like give them a triple jackpot or a triple win, 777. They have looks, they have height, and they have cash. That's a home run. But not every man have that. But for those who don't, success is also an equalizer for men. Achievement. That brings you into a realm where you have selectivity as well, where you can exercise your option as a man so you can be the chooser and don't necessarily have to wait to be chosen. Because when it pertains to mating, sex, pleasure, the power that a man will have in those arenas is the ability to tell a woman no. When you have the selective power to be able to say no, that's when you're at a certain level that most men don't get to achieve. Because the reverse is reality. In the world, naturally, it's the woman that gets the option for no. She can say yes whenever she wants, but she says no 10 times more than she says yes. And men hear no 100 times more than they hear yes. So when a man gets to the level where he can actually, where he can say no, that's when you're in a totally different class. And it's not just saying no for any old reason. It's because you have a standard, you have a brand, you have an image, you have a family name that you're projecting into the future that's going to go through your seed line, that's going to represent something. And deselecting a woman can come from many different reasons. It could be behavior. It could be attitude. It could be lack of respect or disrespectful. It could be decision making, the lack thereof. Impulse control. Some women lack impulse control. Okay, Mr. Lucario. He says, any man can say no. I'd like for you to come up on the stream if you would, and we can have that conversation. I mean, of course, any man can say no, but that's not the reality of life. The reality of life is that men want certain things that they want. And if a man see a particular woman that he wants, not every man can get that woman. Certain men have more access than others. Most men hear no more than they hear yes. And most men, when they would never exclude a woman for almost any reason. But definitely not for some of the reasons I just cited. Most men won't tell a woman no because of her behavior. Most men won't tell a woman no because of her attitude. Most men won't tell a woman no because she's disrespectful. They'll close their eyes to that situation because they want to hit the skins. Most men won't say no to a woman because she's a bad decision maker. And if I may, let me show you guys another video that I've got set up for this very part of the discussion. Hopefully I can make this transition a little easier than the first video. Okay, give me a second. Okay, this is a video I got from JR Wisdom. So if you guys are not subscribers to JR Wisdom's channel, go ahead and hit him up with a subscription. I've been checking him out since I think I got introduced to him through Kevin Samuels when he was doing a lot of reviews of Kevin Samuels' various topics. So I want to show this brief 2-minute clip. I'm not going to show the whole thing, and then we can have the conversation about it.
Mall, right? It was on Mondays around summertime a couple of years ago. We spent all day Monday on the phone. We spent all day Tuesday on the phone. We wrapped it up. So I decided, okay, let me squeeze.
You guys can hear the video?
Monday on the phone. We spent all day Tuesday on the phone.
Were you guys able to hear the video? Give me a 1 in the chat. No sound, no sound. Okay, I see no sound. Hold on one quick second. Share screen. Okay, let's see. Add to the stream. Can you guys see the video now? Okay. All right, let's do this again. Okay, bear with me, guys. Trying to get this done. Okay. Share. Okay, can you guys see the video? Cool, let me.
We wrapped it up. So I decided, okay, let me squeeze her in on Thursday. Because I know I got a date early that day and I got a date that night. So I'm like, I can slide her in the middle, right? Because she was cool. So I tell her, I say, tell you what, meet me at this Mexican restaurant around 7 o'clock. We meet up over there. She's like, well, I'm a little nervous. Can I get a margarita? I said, yeah, girl, get your margarita. I don't drink, but you can get you something. So we had already been talking about a lot of stuff in our past on Monday and Tuesday. Today is Thursday. So she ordered one of those gigantic margaritas, right? Looked like a big old toilet bowl with a straw going down the middle. So by the time that margarita got a little bit lower, she started telling me more stuff. Telling about all the one-night stands, how many times they done freaky stuff on girl trips with her girls. Just putting it all on the line, right? Which was cool. I respect the transparency. So when the date was over with, we go back to the car. I'm walking her to her car. I give her a hug. She starts thrusting that hip against me, telling about what you about to go do. I said, well, I got another date in about a few hours. So she was like, what? I said, yeah, I got another date. Well, that's how it is. So, yeah, I'll have another day. You know, I made time to put you in there. So you're supposed to be thankful. I made time to slide you in there. You ain't grateful. So she's like, oh, when we gonna have our next date? And I told her, I said, honestly, I don't think it's gonna happen. I think you're a wonderful woman. You know, you have a good career ahead of you, but I don't think men you're gonna match. So she said, so because the stuff I told you bothered you? I said, it's not that it bothered me. It's the fact that it shows that when you have alcohol in your system, your decision making completely goes down. You have slept with almost 10, 11 men and having one night stands because you have been drinking. She said, it wasn't no 10, it was like 8. I understand that. What I'm saying is you've had 8 one night stands when you're by yourself or when you're with your friends, when you've had alcohol. No man is going to feel comfortable with you knowing that his girl is not to be trusted when you have a drink. You get one 151, one mimosa, you allowed to sleep with everybody in the restaurant. So she got pissed off at me. I cut it loose at that time. Went on about my business. What's y'all thoughts? Was I wrong for my decision? And y'all grown. Y'all gonna do what y'all want to do.
Yo, my man, interesting video, man. Listen, a lot of you guys want to turn that down, but we're gonna unpack this video here.
Thanks, Johnny. Yeah, the devil is at work today. Tell me about it. As I was saying, obviously that young lady, she met his attraction level scale for them to go out. However, her behavior came into question. Her bad decision making came into question. And her lack of impulse control came into question. And this is what I'm talking about when you get to a certain level where you can start to implement standards in your life. See, your standard in your life is not only the women that you have sex with, but it's also deselecting the women that don't meet your standards. No different than Ferrari deselecting certain clients, though they have the ability to purchase the vehicle, they have notoriety and they have fame, they didn't meet their standards. Though that female, which we did not see, but we have to assume by the brother that was speaking, that she has to have a certain attraction level to at least meet his requirement for a woman that he would date. But upon getting to know her just on a first date situation, she displayed certain qualities or the lack thereof where she did not meet his requirement. So he decided to deselect her. And to bring the conversation full circle, all coochie ain't good coochie. The bottom line is, we are in a climate now where you can't always tell a woman if that's a natural born woman. So you have to be very circumspect in how you entertain. You have to raise your standards with regard to the type of woman you even engage with. Because certain women, today they may be pretty. 5 years from now, they may not be as pretty. And we know what happens when women lose. When they hit the wall, they start going back in their little address book to see who is successful, who they can see if they can get a bag from. So if a woman have disrespectful ways, poor behavior, bad attitude, distrustful. I'm still echoing. I only have one device on. Let me turn the volume down a little bit. These are all different things that can affect you, the man, in the long term. Your image and your standards. Recreational purpose only. Let me pull that up. Hollywood 360. Recreational purpose only. Even in your recreational purpose, you have to be careful. Pump and dump is something that I think you may have to throttle that back. A lot of these ways in which we used to move as men from the 90s, 2010, coming up to 2019, 2020, 2022, going forward, we may not be able to continue those standards of behavior anymore. Simply because the world is changing. And as men, not only do we have to change with the world, but we need to set our mark in the way in which we're going to move. Because there are going to be people who life happened to, and people who direct life, who make life, who make the outcomes that they want. Dealing with any woman, unforeseen outcomes can present themselves. Being as selective as you can with women and raising your bar, your standard, can definitely improve your long-term outcome. Put respect on your name. Because remember, your name is the first branding that you have before an LLC, before an S Corp or C Corp. Let me bring up Eugene.
Hey, how you doing?
How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing fine.
Okay, talk to me. What's your comment on the topic for today?
Well, I think one of the things you've talked about today is about imaging. And it brings to mind about the few things that Kevin Samuels has said about imaging. First, first, and I actually had a conversation with him in one of his streams, and he asked, "Do we have control over our image?" And at the conclusion, after a correction, were you trying to say something? Hello? I can't hear
Who
you.
did you say you had the conversation with?
Kevin Samuels.
Oh, okay, Kevin.
Through one of his streams, and he asked the question, "Do we have control over our image?" And at first, I said I didn't, but then after he explained everything, I understood. So we do have control over our image, and I think that comes hand in hand with protecting our brand, as you should say. Every decision that we make, which includes the sex thing. I know Kevin has mentioned that as well, about being reckless, when it comes to sex, because it can ruin your image. It could ruin we defined high value men. You can be with a circle of men, but your recklessness can actually disassociate yourself from that circle. So yeah, I definitely understood, the importance of image and what it can get you, what it can uh, let it take away from you as well.
Absolutely.
Also, when it comes to the coochie part, now the man that you saw in that video sort of thinks the way I do. When I look at a woman, yeah, I look at the attractiveness of a woman first, but I also look at the attitude of the woman's next. If I see a woman, she looks good, I talk to her, give me the wrong vibe, that's it. Okay. Her attitude just ruined her attractiveness. Just like what the guy said,
Okay.
the only difference between me and that person, I date one at a time.
Absolutely. Well, I don't think it was an issue of him just dating one at a time. I think, you know, it obviously seems like he's very selective about the circle of women that he keeps in his presence. And if you're going to deal with a woman, and she was probably on the attractive level where, he may want to even consider her as a girlfriend at some point. Because the reason he selected for when he chose not to deal with her was a lack of impulse control, bad decision making, and lack of impulse control. And which means some women, and I think that's why the feminists, they have pushed politicians to make laws that a woman, even if she's out and she's drinking and she decides to go home with you voluntarily, the next day after she wake up, she could go back and retract that consent. Because some women, when they get intoxicated, they lose the ability to make good judgments. And they just go with their animalistic desires. So Carlisle Tom says, we need to set our focus on leading and not just on going along.
That
Absolutely. Absolutely. Leading comes first. Let me bring up Dusto. Scam likely. Went all the way back around to come back to Dusto Scam likely. That was your original name from back in what was that, January, February?
Yeah, what's going on?
What's up? What's up? How are you?
I'm good. Interesting topic.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Hold
show
on.
some respect.
My bad. There's something playing in the background. Unfortunately, there's vagina that you can't have, or that are high risk that you're not supposed to be messing with. Like the secretary on your job, like the married woman, like the ratchet woman, the one with 6 kids, the loose woman, the crazy woman. But these dudes, they have to stick their meat in there anyway. I don't understand it, but they're just gonna keep doing it. They can get them and say, "No, I don't do that. It ain't me. No, that ain't what it is." But these women have kids. Somebody put their meat in there. They're still having kids. They have kids and they're having more kids. There's dudes going over there 3 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Somebody's doing it. I'm just saying. As much as you might say, don't do it, they're going to do it anyway. They might not admit it, right? They can't just take dry meat for one more night. They can't go out and go rent some buns and keep the receipt for protection purposes. They can't go fly to Canada, Mexico, DR, Colombia. They just can't do it. They got to go out here and stick their meat somewhere that it doesn't belong. I don't know. Y'all tell me.
Well, obviously, just like many men have poor decision making when it comes to choosing a woman from a sexual standpoint, many women lack the same ability also.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Because we all have an understanding that there's a 18 to 22% or thereabouts of men who are engaging with a lot of women in the community sexually. And a small percentage of those are breeding significantly with those women. The bottom line is women today, or at least some of the women today in our community, they choose for a very select group of things. Status, which is not necessarily the status of society, but the status from the hood, which is a different criteria than the status of society, right? Because, the other day I was having a conversation and like sometimes, like I hear a lot in this space, leading with your wallet. And I think sometimes that is so misinterpreted from at least what I understood it meant from Kevin and from other men that I've been around. The term leading with your wallet is not leading with money. Your wallet really contains your resume, you might say. If you're a member of the racket club, the golf course, the country club, those membership IDs are in your wallet. If you belong to any sorority, you either have a pin, a ring, or some other type of identification that shows your membership to that exclusive sorority or whatever it is that you belong to. If you're a member of the chambers of commerce, if you are graduated with various degrees and you're alumni, obviously your financial success and the network of people that are part of your association, that's all part of your wallet. It's like when you're talking to a person and you meet a person, it's like, especially when you go out on corporate interviews. Many times when you go out on a corporate interview, they already see what's on your resume. So they know the basics of your skills. But many times what I find that corporate managers or interviewers will ask you is, tell me a little bit about yourself. because that's part of your wallet also. Your circle of friends, how and where you socialize, what choices do you make for the places you go, and how you interact in the world professionally. They're trying to get a sense of you as the individual, how you fit here. And I think when we talk about a man leading with his wallet, you're really talking about the man that wallet contains, because that wallet is your life. It's your life in capsule. Contains many things. Money is only one slit in there. Credit cards and all that other stuff, that's just one part of who you are. That's why the statement is leading with your wallet is not leading with your money. Those are two different things. I think that's something that we as men got to understand better. And when it comes to selecting women for entertainment, pleasure, and mating, those are three different classifications with women. The woman that is just for entertainment and pleasure usually don't become a girlfriend and don't become a wife. And I think many times as men, we don't distinguish between those three things. That's why a man could make a hoe into a housewife. Because if the sex is good, that trumps everything else. Until later on, when the fallout tends to happen as women become more familiar in your life, their true nature start to show. Hollywood 360, he said, no pay, no money, no play. That's true. You know, and it also goes into what we call tricking. You know, I think the stigma that black men put on tricking, I think we really got to rethink that, because that's a whole different world outside of the black community. I mean, in my experience where I have socialized with other men, when you reach a certain echelon in society, both from your wallet standpoint, your circle of friends, both personal and business, who you entertain is very important. And a woman is a I wouldn't say just a trophy, but a woman is a sign of someone's accomplishment. The better the woman, both attractive and quality, is a symbol of a man's accomplishment. It's no different than, you know, when you reach $100 million status, $50 million status, $10 million status, there are certain things that comes with that. Houses in different regions of the state or country where you live, boats, what we call yachts that can house helicopters, private jet. Those are symbol of accomplishments for men. Those things says I've reached a certain stratosphere. But in all of those things that a man may acquire, a female is also something that he wants to have to show for his success as well. And men that reach certain level, they project certain women. And money goes with that. If you're on a yacht or a catamaran, you and your buddies, you may have a half a dozen women on the boat with you and your buddy. That's part of socializing. That's part of your success. I mean, until you're ready to settle down and have one woman and build a family, there's a certain part of play that a man must entertain. And I think when we say things like tricking and spending money on a woman is looked down upon, to me, I see that as someone who haven't may not have had enough money to enjoy himself in different aspects of the world. You know, it's like I saw a video the other day about Michael Jordan's son. Michael Jordan's son seemingly is dating Scottie Pippen's wife, Larsa. At least that's what the commentary was saying. The thing with us as black men is that we have low standards. A guy like a Michael Jordan's son, the heir to $1 billion empire, that's like him going out buying a used car with 250,000 miles. He should be dating nothing but young 25-year-old chicks. He should be, you know, where are the days where we used to have the jet setters, the playboy, the flamboyants, guys like what Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man portrays? Like, where are the black men with standards and class and have a way of moving with a certain level of women? For him to be dealing with a 50-year-old woman, to me, what that says is that as black men, we don't really have standards.
I partially disagree.
Tell me why.
Okay. There's a lot of narratives and there's a lot of boxes. Like, for example, man, high value. High value man want this woman right here in this box. He's 36, $250,000 a year.
You're breaking up a little. Okay, go ahead.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
He, this man, you, this woman over here, her, submit. As if it's almost like it's robots. For a woman, they like what they like. It's not going to change. This woman over here doesn't like me because my nose is big. I could be high value through the roof. She doesn't like me. She likes Eugene. There's no amount of money I can pay and wave business card. She don't like me. And there's a lot of people who are dating women that don't like them. They'll string it along for 2 years, 3 years, or 6 months. They'll date. Some of them will date the wallet. But then there's also some women who are 9s and 10s, but they met John at the post office. He works night shift. He makes $58 a year, and he just does it for her. She might marry that man and date him for 70 years until they die. Like, it's not actually a one-for-one system. Some women like Pookies. They just don't like Eugene. I don't know why. Some women like you.
Well, let me say this, and this is the whole thing, is that I think this is where we as black men have to decouple, like the Starship Enterprise. The saucer section have to separate from the main body of that starship. As black men, as we start to accomplish and raise our standards, there have to be a separation between the woman that's going to be with a Pookie and live in the hood and stay with a broke dude that's going to play video games, work part-time jobs, or just scramble or hustle, and she takes care of him. And just because a woman like that may have a college degree and is financially successful and she can pay her own way, if those are the men that she's choosing, fine. But I think, I'm talking about men who have the ability to separate themselves, men who have the ability to make standards for themselves. When you have a standard for yourself, it doesn't matter what the woman think. You're the one with the power. You're the one with the power to say no. You have totally taken the power out of their hands. And it's not about a woman living with you for umpteen number of years for your money, because broke people get divorced every day. So that ain't got nothing to do with your money. See, we can always come up with a reason as to why a relationship breaks up 20 years after the fact. She was only with you for your money. But then if the guy don't have money, oh, you just didn't have good D. There's always a reason after the fact to kind of explain a female's disinterest at some point later. As men, we can't be concerned about those things. We get the woman we want for when we want them. And when it's over, it's over. We don't live in a world 100 years ago where you stayed with the same person for 50 years. We can't think that way. We just have to go for what we want and take what we want when we can get it. And when it's no longer available, discard it. It's like, go ahead.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
So you're against marriage?
So again, am I against marriage? I am for marriage. I'm for family.
Maybe I'm missing what you're saying. It sounds like you're
saying
saying
marriage don't last forever.
So I want to ask you this. When you're courting and vetting a woman, shouldn't your standards be the biggest part, the biggest consideration of it all?
Your standards of her or your standards of you?
Yeah, standards of me. Yeah.
Well, your standard is whether or not she will fit with you. Right? But then her behavior is whether or not you will choose her.
Mm-hmm.
Because a woman may accept your standards, but she may have certain behavioral characteristics that go diametrically against what you would want as a wife. So you would have to deselect her. Mm-hmm. But she could be good for sex. You look confused, Dusto.
What's the goal?
Say again?
Yeah, I'm lost because I'm wondering what the goal is. One minute is marriage, but marriage don't last. Then it's just go get you a piece because the goal is getting sex. I'm kind of lost.
Okay.
Now, every man has a different goal and you have a different agenda, but every man is also different.
No, what I'm saying is that some people say when a man who have money and he's been married for 20 years and his wife leaves him, and because the laws in the United States, pretty much after a 20-year marriage, make her entitled to 50% of your income or your net worth. Now, that can be settled out in court depending on whether you had a prenup or not and what was established before she came in to the relationship. So that's just the settlement, right? But the thing is that what we hear many times is that if you have money and the woman divorces you 20 years later, then it becomes, well, she never really loved you anyway. She was there for the money.
False narratives.
People say that. People say that a lot. People say that about Dr. Dre. Then we know we have marriages that get divorced in Black America so often. And the individuals who are getting divorced are not rich. So when those divorces happen, what we hear then is that, oh, he didn't have good D. So my point is, 20 years after the fact, when a marriage failed, for whatever reason why it failed, we as men always try to justify why that man, for whatever reason, didn't live up to what he was supposed to keep the marriage intact. And what I'm saying is that we're living in a time now where a woman have the ability to change her mind. And whether she do it 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, or 30 years into a marriage, when she make that decision, we know back in the day there used to be such a thing as a woman's prerogative. meaning she don't really have to have a justification. All she have to do is have a change of mind. She could come up with a justification. And so many times we used to hear on Kevin Samuel's show, women talk about he was abusive. So Kevin would ask him, well, was that in the first year or year 10? And they always get stumped in that question. Because women make justification for why they do something long after the fact. Something that makes them look good and the man look not so good. So what I'm saying is, if you want a family, choose the best woman you can get to have a family. But for you to be able to exercise your best choice is to be able to raise yourself to a level where you can deselect women who don't meet your requirement. Because if you're not at the level where you can deselect women, you pretty much have to take what you can get from the pool. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
You look like
Okay.
you're struggling to understand. I mean, let me ask you this. Do you believe a marriage is forever?
I believe a marriage should be forever. Depends
Okay,
on the
that's
two
not the
people
question.
it depends
not
on
the
the two
question.
people getting married.
That's not
I
the
mean,
question. I said, do you believe a marriage is forever?
That's a trick question.
No, it's a straightforward question. It's either a yes or no.
I believe yes.
Okay. So
it's
if
a
you
weird
believe
question.
that a marriage is forever, and if you marry a woman and she do not stay forever, then what is that?
It's a failed marriage.
Who failed the marriage?
Both. Depends on the situation.
Could be the man.
So
Or
then
could be
does
the
that
woman.
mean that the marriage was a failure?
I don't know.
Does that mean the marriage was a failure?
If they're not married no more, then yeah.
If they're not, okay, but what was your intent when you went into the marriage? See, I think like if you were going into business with someone, you had projections, goals, like when you do a JV, right? A joint venture. A joint venture usually have a time limit for the business. It's not like a C corp. A JV has a limit to the business venture. So it could be 5 years, 10 years, sometimes longer. But there's an objective that the JV is supposed to accomplish. And at the end of the time of that JV, it dissolves.
Well, people aren't okay.
And the thing is that
Go ahead.
a marriage is a contract. The problem with the marriage contract is that back in the day, a marriage contract was, as Eugene said, it was forever. When you made the pledge, when a man made the pledge to the woman and the woman made the pledge to the man, they lived up to it. Partly because they had the family and the community to give them support to be able to do so over time, because all relationships have struggles. And when you're going through the rough spots, that's when you need support. But in the community today, in the way in which we live in the world, there is no support. There is no community. When you have problems, people say, what? Cut it off. You don't need to deal with that. So the community is completely different than it was 100 years ago.
I see it different. I mean,
Hold on one
you
second.
can.
The
Go
real
ahead.
Pookie says, let me read this. The
Oh, he's been
accountability,
going on.
Mr. Lee, your marriage failed because of you. What man runs to Honduras after failing at life? Mr. Lee. Good comment. My marriage failed for several reasons, and I would say because I was part of it, it definitely was because of me. So I'll grant you that. But Honduras, I've been to at least 10, 12 countries. Honduras is just the one I'm in now. A year from now, I'll probably be someplace else. I've lived in 4 or 5 states in the U.S. and several countries outside the U.S. So I'm a man that kind of lived my life the way I want to live my life. And after my marriage failed, I decided to do other things with my life that I wanted to do. And travel was part of it. But as I was saying, and coming back to Michael Jordan's son, right? Having the ability to choose. And I know what you're saying about you like what you like. But you see, having a standard goes beyond you like what you like. See, having a family name and putting respect to the name goes beyond that. See, there's certain behavior that there's a bar, how low it will go, and you don't go below that bar.
Yeah, well, that's why I don't like celebrities. We don't know who his son is. He could be a
we
dust
use
storm with
celebrities
$5 million.
because no,
He
but
could
I
be
understand.
dusty for $5 million.
We use celebrities because they're people that are just like us with money. And because they're famous, everybody can kind of like give their opinion or perspective. If you were to talk about somebody you know around the way that you know, I wouldn't know who the hell you're talking about. Likewise, if I was to do the same thing, Eugene or many of us would do, right? So we use individuals in the broader society that everyone can look at and use it as an example for a conversation. And what I'm saying, at the age of 36, that's the prime age of a man. That's really when you come into your manhood as a man. I mean, for him, he had the finance a lot younger because of his dad. But most men don't start to begin their financial stride until about the age of 36. And what I'm saying is, when you're at a billionaire status, you know, like we look at, what's the guy name? What's that white guy that just dropped his girlfriend of 25 years? I mean, that's 25. What's his name? Somebody help me out in the chat. Who just got rid of his girlfriend at the age of 25? There's a white boy. He always dated a girl between 22 and 21. And when she turned 25, he drops her. Leonardo DiCaprio. Thank you, Mr. Awesome. And is that Khadijah? Khadijah Moore. He has a standard for himself. He don't give a shit about the world. He says, my standard is this, X. You don't see him dating no 50-year-old chick. And he's not concerned about what other chick might or might not like him. He goes for the chick that he wants. See, when you have selectability, you choose. And that start off young. That start from having standards in your life. A man with no standards, he could be worth $1 billion and he's still going to choose a hoe. Because that's all he knows. Prime example, Kanye West. See, standard starts from you. You have to set the standards that you're going to have as a man. And as you achieve your success, that's something that projects out and people know about it. And then when you open a business, your business is going to have a standard, meaning standard of customer service, standard of quality of product, standard if the product is defective, you take it back, you return the money, or you replace it. Those are standards. And if black men wants to improve their image, we have to have standards as men.
Facts.
And sometimes having a standard means that you have to make a sacrifice. For a time, it's not forever. Sacrifices are not for the rest of your life. They're always for a time. It's like if you want a degree as a doctor or as a lawyer, you can't be partying every night through college. I mean, some people who are rich may be able to do that because their parents can buy a university building to get their kid the degree. But that's different. I'm talking about people who have to work to achieve. Is
Yeah.
that something as men that we could live by? It seemed like you struggle with that, Dusto.
Okay. Yeah, there's a Michael Jordan son. We don't know who he is. He could be on snorting
No, I'm
cocaine
not.
on
Okay, good.
Leonardo DiCaprio, a bit probably millionaire actor. And you're talking about just picking up and randomly dropping women when he turns. That's not realistic. I don't know. That's more of Michael Jordan's son dating a 50-year-old. And I think they say Scottie Pippen's wife was getting it in with these other, all that is just mess. I'm just being honest. That's just people running out here doing whatever they want. And it usually doesn't work. Doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or a pookie. Running out here doing whatever you want to do any kind of way, there's consequences. It's just not the way. Now, standards, yes. Eugene Steele, for example. There's the type of woman he wants. There's something he likes. Something he's probably searching for. And he's a decent person. There's probably something he can improve on as he's doing his search. Build yourself to be the best person and then look for the best candidate that fits you. The type of woman he might be looking for may be different than the one that I'm looking for, or different than what you look for or looked for 10 years ago versus 10 years from now. I think it's just be focused on being the best person you are, identifying the best woman that you can get that matches what you're looking for, along with the plan that you have, along with the person you are, along with your strengths and your weaknesses, her strengths and weaknesses, and trying to work from there. But just a little bit more realistic. That's all I'm saying.
Before I respond to what you just said, Malevolent Elephant says, I hate when we use celebs as proxies. Well, the thing is, for us to be able to have a broad conversation, we have to use celebs. We have to talk about people who we all know vicariously in the world to the degree that we know about them and the action that we see and how they interact in the world. We don't know the details of their life, of course, but we know the big picture in moments that we see. It'd be difficult for us to be having conversations about individuals in our personal lives that nobody knows other than me or other than Eugene or anyone else. So it's necessary for us to be able to have a broader discussion on issues that we can reflect back and entertain using those who are more famous and renowned within society. But you were saying something, Dusto. Of course, we choose from the circle that we know, from the people by which we come across. And yes, there's consequences to choice.
What do you mean, consequence to choice?
Well, you said earlier that there were consequences to choice.
Well, I'm talking the celebrities,
No, not celebrities. You were talking individually, I believe.
Yeah, if you pick wrong, there's a price to pay. Yeah.
I think this is why
picking wrong has a consequence. Yes.
Yeah, you be coming in and out.
Who, me?
Go ahead, Eugene.
My microphone?
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Really?
I think this is why you have to, first, figure out what your standards are before you go into the vetting process, because it'll depend on your standards. But also, what I want to say is, when you're going out vetting, not only you're checking to see, if she meets your standards, but you're also checking to see.
Speak up a little, Eugene.
But you're also checking to see, what sacrifices are you willing to make?
Well, I think firstly, the sacrifices that you make is in your career to achieve your goals. You set goals and work towards achieving those goals, and you dedicate a certain period of time to be able to do that. But then once you start climbing the ladder of success, you have to also be screening for yourself who you entertain in your life, because you have to, it's like flies are attracted to light, right? All types of flies. As you become more successful in life, you are attracted to, women are attracted to you, because as you rise in society, you start to have a different circle of friends. You become more known, even if you're not world famous. You become more known in the circle in which you frequent. There's some parts of New York City that people don't even know exist. They walk down the street, but they don't know what's behind the buildings, what's inside. There are things that happens in penthouses that if you don't get an invite to, you don't know. So once you rise up in those circles where you get those invitations and you entertain in those spaces, new people will start being attracted to you, and you to them, vice versa. But then what do? Do you carry your strag girlfriend from the hood to the penthouse? And that's where I think many times some men don't know how to let go. They believe that their environment has such a dominant hold on them that they're unable to climb the staircase of different stratosphere as you become more successful. Why is it that you find so many rappers who become financially successful but yet are tied to the hood and meet their demise by the hood? Because they're unable to let go. It's a mindset. Their standards is still where they were from a little boy when they were in the hood. The things that they look up to, the things that they admire, the type of woman they find as attractive, and the behavior is the same as when they were 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. And now that they're 25 or older and they're worth millions of dollars, their standards have not changed. They have not increased. They make the same choice as the average guy in the hood that's broke. And that's the difference. So it doesn't only apply to women, but women are potentially the most detrimental choice a man can make in life, particularly as he becomes more successful. Because the things you can buy, where you buy a house, you can sell it and buy another house. The cars that you buy, you could trade them in and get a new car. Where you live, you can move and live someplace else. But the woman you choose, once you procreate with her or you marry her, she can last a lifetime. She may not be in your life all your life, but she could last a lifetime. And the headaches that she can leave in your life, it could be like an earthquake, a tornado, a tsunami that can take you 20 years to overcome. In some people's case, they never overcome. So clapping cheeks or some coochie, you have to be able to make a decision at some point in your life. Is it worth for me to choose this woman? Like we hear women talk about good D. I saw an interview the other day. I think it was Gerald Wisdom as well. And this guy was interviewing this chick. And he asked her, what's her body count? You know what she said? Now, just looking at this woman and listening to her talk, she talked a little hoodish, but she was attractive. dark skin or brown skin woman, she was attractive. She said her body count, if she got the number right, is about 2,000. And she looked to be at least no more than 30 years old. She said she started having sex when she was 12.
Sage, that means there's 1,999 men who actually are interested in her, or at least a pound. 20% of those
Well, I mean,
men
I'm not gonna
will
get
actually
graphic
date
like
her and
that. That's
marry her.
not necessary.
No, I'm
Right.
just saying. I'm just saying. There's what's on paper and how it may look, but the reality is, there's people marrying ex-porn stars. There's people marrying. I'm just saying. The market is people. I mean, the people are doing what they want to do.
Absolutely. But sometimes people make choices because they never had any guidance. We know today that there's a lot of men and women coming out of single family homes. Yes. Chad, the grit 8. Yeah, it was 2,000 between men and women she slept with. That was correct.
Oh God.
So a woman like that, emotionally, how she make decisions, regardless of how she live her life, that's her choices. But what I'm saying, from a man's perspective, if you don't have a standard in your life or establish standards in your life, if attractiveness is the only standard that allows you to make a decision to choose a woman, you could end up with a woman like that. Because on an attractive scale, she was attractive. So the key, because see, the thing is, as black men, we're used to the hood life. That's what's projected in the music and in movies. Hood life is what's projected. There have to be a new projection on a new standard for black men, because the standard that have existed has been in place since 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, for the past 40 years.
I don't think that's true.
And I think going forward, we as men have to, I mean, I'm too old, right? I'm not out there like that. But I think young men like yourself, you're in your 30s, right? Dusto?
42.
42? Okay, you're still young. I remember when I was 42. I was kicking it. But you're still at the age where you can set an example. You can be an example to others. And I think as black men raise their standard and their conduct, their behavior, their circle, their interaction with women, you know, when you rise above a certain standard, it's like guys who they say will creep at night, right? They will bust down some 300-pound chick who they would never be seen in the daylight with, but they will creep on a woman like that at night to get with her. See, if you have standards, you're not going to creep. You know why? And this is another thing that I think a lot of guys don't realize. Some of the finest chicks trick. Because I won't say broke, but if you're a woman and you're just average looking, a 5'4" or below, you can't really trick that well. You could be on the street, but you can't really trick. I mean, if you're an 8, 9, and a 10, 9 times out of 10, if you meet a woman that's between the ages of 21 and 26, and she's in the category of an 8 or higher, she tricked.
I disagree.
She's been selling. You can't believe that?
Just like there's a false narrative. Don't go out there and get them beautiful 8, 9s, and 10s. Get you a 5.
No, I'm not.
They
I'm
gonna
not
teach you
talking
that.
about getting one.
No,
I'm
but
just
the other one,
saying.
just because she's pretty, she tricks. That's not true. Because there's 4s and 5s tricking is doing for less money. They just ain't making as much money. The
Say again?
tricking and how a woman acts isn't always tied to how they look. If you go to divorce court tomorrow, you'll see wigger ratchets with a bonnet yelling at me. Or if you cut on TikTok, the women chasing after men with frying pans, it's not all the pretty ones. It's not all ugly ones. It's women across the board.
Meek
Just like
Casanova says, wow, Sag is off his rocker. Okay. I'll tell you this. Back
there's
in
some
the late
8s, 9s, and 10s
90s.
that are virgins.
Say again?
There's some 8s, 9s, and 10s that are virgins. There's some 3s that have been ran through. They got kids.
I wouldn't disagree with you, but that's not, neither of those things are on the spectrum of a large majority or big percentage. You're talking about exceptions, especially a very attractive woman today that is a virgin. She may be either underage or she's just getting out into the world, right?
I'm just saying it's not
So
connected.
I'm not going to
the look.
discount that. Of course, there's a woman somewhere that is beautiful, that is a virgin, of course. I'm not going to disagree with that. But what I'm going to tell you and why I say this, it's like I live in New York, lived past tense. And I know that there are places on Park Avenue, Madison Avenue, and Lexington Avenue that you need to have a black card or a gold card. Not a credit card, a pass card. And you call the number and they give you an address location and you show up at a penthouse and it's a party or whatever and there's nothing but 8, 9s, and 10s. And you can choose whichever one you want. And those women, they socialize inside of New York City. They hang out, they party. But there are places where you can go where these women are available, fine as fuck, from the age of 21 to about 28, 29, I would say is the oldest I've ever met. I mean, I don't want to go into details, but trust me, I know places, locations throughout New York. I've been to many places. And this is 20 years ago, before social media. And I'm telling you, guys, I see guys going up to fine chicks, rapping to them when I know last week she was getting turned out in a penthouse. I've seen it. I've been there.
That's a very small
And I'm not
percentage.
saying that's every woman, but I'm saying if that behavior was prevalent then, it's more so now. Strip club in the late 90s was when strip club was like a big thing. Now, the culture, the dress, the behavior is the way strippers used to act in the club. This is how women act today. That whole culture has moved into the broader culture of society. So the chances that you will more likely find a woman that behave a certain type of way as opposed to the virgin that's an 8, 9, or 10 that you just spoke of, that's a rarity. One is common, the other is not.
Small percentage of women are selling buns.
Say again?
Well, for one, there's a small percentage of women who even look that good because they're getting so fat now. But out of that small percentage,
one second. There's a small percentage of women that are what?
selling buns.
Selling box?
Yeah, buns, box. I mean, okay,
There's a
that's almost
small
like saying,
percentage. So why is it that so many women are making money on OnlyFans?
okay, that's almost like saying every time I cut on TikTok, it's some black dudes fighting. Therefore, all black dudes are violent and they're fighting. It's a false narrative.
No, I don't have a TikTok account, so I wouldn't know about black men fighting on TikTok. But I think the algorithm, the way TikTok is set up, it brings you what you tap into, right? But my point is we know that many women, we've seen it from Fresh and Fit, Kevin Samuels, and different guys that have conversations with women, that there are many women who have gone to OnlyFans. And OnlyFans is not like TikTok. OnlyFans is a business, more so like YouTube.
I'm lost. Okay.
And women are going there to sell feet pictures, or whatever. But they're not using their talent of their college degree for those who have gone to college. They're using their sexuality, their gift, their born gift to make money.
Oh, so if all of these women that are pretty are selling, are all of them on OnlyFans selling all this vagina?
See, don't interject and say things that I don't say. I
Or
don't
not
speak
all.
in.
If it's a
I
very
didn't say
high
all.
percentage.
I said there are many women, and there's a larger amount than not. I didn't say all because I don't speak as all.
Okay. No, I was just saying it was a very small percentage of women who are doing this. That's all I was saying.
Where do you live? What part of the
Tampa.
United States you live? Tampa.
Tampa.
Have you ever lived in Miami for a couple of years?
No.
Say again?
Mm-mm.
I didn't see your mouth moving. I can't hear you. So
Oh, no.
is
No
that a
Miami.
yes?
No to Miami.
Oh, okay. Well, I've lived in Sacramento, and I lived in LA, and I've lived in New York. I've never lived in Miami, but I've socialized quite a bit. And on both coasts, I've been in places where I saw a lot of women behave and are available. Pretty women, not average women. Now, there weren't many black women in those places, I will say that. But there were other women.
No. All I was saying is just a small percentage.
So let me ask you this. If you say it's a small percentage, why is it such a big issue for men, black men particularly, to find a good woman just for a girlfriend besides having a wife? Just for a girlfriend. Why is SYSBM, Passport Bros, and all these other things are catching on and are building momentum for men finding a decent woman in the United States, which I think even you have said from time to time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's not because every woman I meet in the grocery store says, "Sorry, I'm rich because I sold my buns on OnlyFans for $3,000 last week." That's not the reason.
No, I'm
It's
not.
a combination of things.
I didn't allude to that.
But no, I'm just saying, if you say Fresh and Fit and some of these other channels, a lot of them, that's their story. So that's what they're going to go and look for, and that's what they're going to bring down there. They're going to hunt for porn star. Okay. Fresh and Fit has a market. They're going to get young girls that are out of control. They got an Instagram. They can promote their page and get flued out and do whatever. That's their environment. Young, out of control women. So that's what's going to show up there. Then they're going to present it to a whole bunch of incels who don't get any women anyway. And they're going to believe that this is all the world is because they don't know, because they can't get these women anyway. And they keep coming, keep going.
Anyone,
they brainwash them, they lose their mind.
I don't think anyone that watched Fresh and Fit believed that those are all the women that exist, right? But it's a big enough majority that it's problematic for a lot of men, because a lot of the exclusion for men is either high body count or lack of being chosen.
Yeah, I think it probably grows out of frustration. You know, it's like
Say again?
it's all our frustration, basically. I personally believe that there are good black women out here in this country. They're so harder to find, but I know they exist. And, personally, I haven't given up on that. See, what happens is men, who are frustrated by all these ratchet women that you see almost in all corners of this country, they get so frustrated with, what they see. So this is why, some of us decide they want to go out the country to look for love, where, there's still some out there. I know it's like finding needles in a one big haystack, but I guess some
But
men,
but
I don't know.
just to your point, Eugene, the fact that you say finding a needle in a haystack, there are 22 million black women, roughly give or take, in the United States. There's a portion of them that are married, and there's a larger portion that are not.
Mhm.
Why is it that it's got to be finding a needle in a haystack? It never used to be like that before for any society, and definitely not for the black community. There's a definite change that have taken place over the past 10 or 25 years, 10 to 15, 25 years. Since the late 90s till now, there's a change. And I think you, Dusto, with all honesty, I think you have said that you have found it difficult to find a girlfriend.
No. Find a girlfriend, I can go grab somebody if I wanted to. I can grab one and be somewhat whatever, but I want what I want for the long term.
Exactly.
And I also plead guilty to those women I dated in my past. If I knew what I knew now, one of them I would actually marry. And this is multiple women, and they're often married now, and they're not divorcing their husbands. Meaning, are they good women? Yes. Is it easy to find them? Just walk out and grab them? No. If you pick the wrong one, do you fail? Yes. But my experience with women that I've dated
Okay, when you
wasn't
say
this
pick,
horrible stuff that
when you
people
say
say on YouTube.
when you say pick the wrong one, what does that mean?
Pick a woman who's not a wife, doesn't want to be your wife, but willing to marry you
Okay,
anyway.
but
There's a
okay.
price
So
for
what
that.
you're saying is, hold on, let me understand what you mean when you say that. You mean that when he was choosing a wife, he knew she wasn't a wife, but he chose her anyway. Is that what you're saying?
There are people doing that, and they're paying the price.
Okay, all right. I agree with that. But do you think more people do that than not?
I'll say this much. Because there's no black community no more, and because there's no examples, there's no guidance, teaching, whatever, there's a lot of people who just don't know, and they don't see examples. They're not taught to lead, guide, look out for this. There's no counseling. You're talking about a whole bunch of people who aren't husbands and twice as many of women who aren't wives. That's a recipe for disaster. Therefore, there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff, people out of control getting divorced. That's just what it is.
So you've literally spoke to the issue, because that's why. So let me ask you this. So there are men who were raised in the same families as the women, but yet the men are raising their standard and they're saying, I want a woman to behave differently. So they're going overseas to find a woman that behave differently. It's not just about looks. Looks, I think, is gravy for men that are going overseas. Looks is gravy. But the big part of it is communication and respect and interaction. I think that's the big takeaway that I hear many men are talking about.
Yeah, there's two sides to the passport bro thing. One of them is, of all the people in the spaces talking about we going overseas, most of them don't even have a passport, just talking. Most of them never even
Well,
left
I'm
their,
not, but if, okay.
or
if
are you only
someone,
talking about the ones who really are doing it?
if someone is not traveling and they don't have a passport, they don't have nothing really of value to talk about. You know,
But they're the ones talking.
I'm talking about the men who are actually traveling, who
Okay.
may have a platform, and for people who are on their platform that are traveling. You know,
Okay,
let's
come
keep
on.
it to
Okay, makes sense.
the conversation where the people who are doing it, as opposed to identify the minorities who just maybe aspire.
Okay. I do know some people who've married, and this is all races, and this is men and women that are recruited overseas and married, and that stayed married. I also know some that went over there, or how can I say it? Also been overseas and seen international simping at the highest, where they're almost about to get married, and she got a whole Dominican husband, or got 3 American men sending money. I mean, I've seen all the funny stuff.
That happens in the United States all the time.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, when people just think like it's you just click a switch and get a passport, like it's a quick fix. I'm just saying there's two
Well,
sides.
I mean,
The people who are
I'm
winning with
saying,
doing it, but there's also a
but the
side when
point
we're
is,
talking about.
the point
Okay.
is, if he found out and he was able to make a different decision, he found out. How many times have we hear women say that they were dating a guy and they were looking to get serious? He even proposed to her, and then she find out he's married right in the United States. So we can't walk around and act like women are not women around the world. Women are women.
That goes both ways.
What goes both ways?
What I'm saying is there's small percentage of good women in the United States. We know that. But the way they present passport bros is as if all you do is get a passport, you show up in another country, and you can just pick anything, come back and marry, and everything's going to be successful. And that's not true.
But
I
think that is a
Well,
very
it's presented.
disingenuous. I think that is a very disingenuous image to put forth.
That's what they're
Obviously,
presenting.
say again.
That's what they're making it look like.
No, that's what you're interpreting. I think some people interpret what they want to interpret, because I say things from time to time and I see what the chat say, and it's completely contrary to what I'm saying. But they're allowed to interpret what they hear and how they filter things. People filter things through the eyes that they're commonly used to doing. So I don't try to make a person see what I see. I speak what I say, and then based on your filtering in life will make you perceive it a certain way. If you have a certain clear mind, then you will be able to analyze what was said objectively. Some people are unable to do that.
That's true too.
And I don't let
Yeah.
people who have their own coloring make me feel any kind of way of what I said, because if what I said was not what they interpret, that's not my problem. And I think sometimes what happens is that because someone comes back and they're jubilated because of the experience that they have, they're going to talk from a position of excitement. First impressions is something that's, you know, in business, we say you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So if you go to a faraway country and you're used to a certain way of interacting with the women in your home country, and then you go to another country and it seems as though interacting with them is far easier and simpler, and it flows, then your commentary is going to be like, holy shit, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to be that way as you continue to go and visit the country and meet a woman that you may want to have a relationship with, but just meeting a woman in a social environment, it's easier because the woman understands what it means to be a woman and she knows what it's like to entertain with a man. And they are not like, hit my Cash App before you even can have a conversation. It's a different interaction. So I just think it's someone speaking from a place where they had a good experience. Doesn't mean that that is the experience that you want, but it does mean that the chances that 9 out of 10 brothers that may visit such a place may also have a good experience. Doesn't mean you're going to get the outcome that you want, but you might have a good experience too. And I think sometimes some of us are close to the fact that a person could just be excited. A person can just have, if you are 35 years old and you've been dating women since you were 22 and you've never had a real good experience with a woman, and then you go to a country and you have something completely opposite than you're used to, for you, that's going to feel like, wow, what the fuck?
All I'm saying is there's some guy could be in the chat tonight who's 28, 29. And they go to a channel and they're saying, oh man, passport. Man, we about to. All I'm saying is, just like in America, dating women, just like overseas, I'm just saying they need to know what the truth is. It's like, I can speak English and Spanish. I speak enough Spanish to have conversations, not just with the English speakers, but even with the people who speak Spanish, whose cousins way in the mountains somewhere. Or the people who visit places for, like, it's a whole different conversation when you really are speaking to people from the other country. Or when you're there 7 to 10 days instead of like 3 days. Or when you're venturing out with a Puerto Rican and Dominican who speak fluent Spanish. I mean, it's just a little bit different. Or when you talk to the people who live there who aren't con men, because a lot of expats that move over there, they're conning Americans worse than the locals are. I'm just saying there's a other part of this, and just people need to understand like how this really works.
Right, but
as well as I work as well as one of my best friends or some friends of mine work at the immigration office. They used to work down at the window where the people are coming in. Hey, can you deport my husband? He was married for 3 years and now he won't do nothing after he got his green card. Like, they're not sharing that part. Not saying that it's 90% of the marriages. I'm just saying if you're gonna put the picture out there, put the full picture out. That's all I was saying.
Well, I think that no restaurant advertised that they got roaches in the back. They got roaches in the back. I don't care how fancy the restaurant is. Now, when they're cooking and preparing, do they clean all their utensils and clean all their plates and clean their preparing areas and everything is sanitary to prepare the food and serve the food? Of course. But when they close the restaurant and turn out the lights, the vermins come out. They may not be as prominent as some place in the ghetto, but there's some. So you don't advertise the negative, you advertise and promote the positive. And it's up to you to try to get the best, even if you were just having a vacation to go to a place to swim, enjoy the sun, see the view, all the sights in that particular country. Some people go for that and still have a bad experience. But should we focus on the people who had the bad experience as opposed to the tens of thousands who had good experiences and saw the sights, didn't lose their luggage, didn't lose their passport, didn't almost drown? Shit happens. But I think when you say to focus on, tell both sides of the story, if someone went on a trip and they have a good experience, the side of the story they're telling is the part that they know. There was a guy that I saw about a month ago that did a whole video that talked about him getting drugged. He's telling the part of the story from his experience. So guys are being honest and reflective of their experience. And I think I think that sometimes, because we may have a particular perspective, we shouldn't try to persuade others from broadening their experience. Because I think if there's a guy, whether it's in this chat, and I'm not necessarily promoting traveling, but I don't see anything against it because I've done it for at least the past 25 years of my life, and it's been a great experience. But if you're 28 years old and you have the ability to travel, travel. I know most white people that I've worked with, when their kids get out of college, usually for the first 2 years, they do what they call that, missionary work.
Like
They
Peace
come to
Corps.
places like Honduras, Nicaragua, Guatemala, South America, and in some places in Africa. I met some people in Mali when I was out there. And they do this, and they do this for a couple of years. Then they go into their career, whatever that's going to be. They're not traveling for sex, and they're roughing it. They're not traveling for the tourism experience either. They're roughing it within the country, backpacking. So I think, we have to just be more open-minded to broadening our experiences in general. And just because dating outside the country may be a new thing, a fad or whatever, we shouldn't shun it either, because it will find its own level. Water finds its own level. It will find its own level with regard to brothers who are traveling. Not everyone can afford to do it. Not everyone is going to have a good experience. But many will find enough of an experience that when they come back to the U.S., they may decide to settle and marry in the U.S. anyway.
Yeah,
But then their experience will be broadened as in terms of what treatment and how they want to be in a relationship with a woman right here.
yeah, I'm more just talking about the false advertise or the false narratives, or some of it is people hearing what they want to hear. That's true. Some of it is false advertisement. Some of it is by people who've never been saying too much stuff of not, just like Trigger Mike is Nigerian.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Have you traveled to the Dominican Republic?
Yeah.
Have you traveled to Cartagena or Medellin?
Medellin. Been there before.
Okay. How long did you spend there?
Medellin, 8 days.
8 days. And the reason you went was?
Vacation.
Vacation. Did you have a good time?
It was cool till I got sick.
Okay. Would you recommend it to anyone?
Sure.
Okay. So my point is, you traveled for the purpose you did and you had a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for the men who traveled and are reporting that they had a good time, it's the same difference. The only thing is, if you're speaking of those who didn't travel and are just falsely making a statement, then they're being false. I have no defense for someone who's being false. 1 second. Let me, the real Pookie. Thanks for the super chat, Mr. Lee. Tell me how career, finance, and influence has benefited you as a man of your age. That's a long story.
Yeah.
I'm about
to drop off. Appreciate the conversation.
Right. Appreciate coming up.
Also appreciate y'all in the track. Troll Lives Matter. Good night, everybody.
Real Pookie, if you'd like to come up on the panel, just come in the back chat, show who you are, and I'll bring you up and we can have that conversation. It's not a problem. I think also, I'm not sure how long you have been watching Sage Talk, but you could go back from January. I've got over 30 shows that you can go back, and I've recounted many aspects of my life, my career, my failed marriage, as you have so eloquently noted, my travels, my friendships, my social life. There are many aspects to my life that I have spent time discussing over the past 30 plus videos in many ways. So you could do yourself a little research and maybe binge watch over a weekend or two, get caught up, and maybe your questions will be answered. And if not, then we can always talk about it. Trigger Mike, good evening. How are you, sir?
Oh, good evening. I'm doing well, and you?
Okay, doing well, doing well. How are you enjoying the conversation?
Oh, I love it. It's an excellent topic. Interesting viewpoints from Desto as always.
Well, I think he likes to push back on a lot of things. That's his MO. I don't have a problem with it.
Yep.
Well, the main topic that I really wanted to focus on was standards and about black men having standards. And standards really begins with your name as a man.
Yeah.
Because we talk about money and we talk about legacy, but your legacy is more than just the money. It's your family name that continues.
Yeah.
And what does that name represent? And I started off with a video by Ferrari and how they have dropped several people as customers and they have put them on a blacklist that they can't purchase from them anymore because they have fallen below the standard as an owner for their vehicle because they have a standard for their brand, for their company, and for the vehicles that they sell. And then I also showed another video that Gerard Wisdom was interviewing, or he was reviewing himself, about a young brother who went on a date with a young lady, and after she had a drink or two, started to really open up about her life and her behavior. And he, using his standard, eliminated her as someone that he would continue to date.
Yeah.
And that's really was where I was trying to focus our conversation, because we talk about so many things in the black community that we lack, but how are we going to make changes if we don't at first bring forth those changes in those ideas? One quick second. I've got another super chat by the real Pookie. Thanks for the $5. Why are you not winning with the ladies then? I've seen the majority of your shows. Where is the results? Not sure what you mean by winning with the ladies. I've had several ladies in my life, even here. I just don't prefer to live with a woman at this point in my life. So I'm not really sure what you mean by the ladies. If you mean I should put forth whoever I'm seeing or talking to on a YouTube channel to satisfy someone who called themselves the real Pookie with a black Donald Trump, I'm not really, how can I say? I'm not really challenged for who I represent myself to be. And I think if and when you ever, or not just you, but people from the YouTube space get to know those from my past, you will know that I'm real. And if you don't get to know, that's good too. Die alone. Men die alone all the time, bro. Men die alone all the time. That's men die alone on the battlefield. Men die alone in homelessness in cities. Men die alone in the VA hospital. Men die alone a ton of places.
More than anyone. Yeah, we do. That is correct.
That's something that is well known for men. Not so much for women. So yeah, go ahead, Trigger Mike. Bless us with your perspective on the conversation.
No, I really like the example about Ferrari. That's insightful because that's really deep when you look at how you get into it. Now, that particular example would go more to a serious level of refinement, right? They are a luxury brand. So when we think about who we need to aspire to, that's going to be the top tier, right? So the person that I would look up to and how they treat themselves and the people they want around them, that would probably be the best example. Now, what I can say about men, especially in our community, in the Black community, I can say ultimately there are no standards, not anymore. And I don't think it's a lack of standards from them knowing. I think it's a lack of education as what the standards are supposed to be. You know, large majority of Black men alive today were lacking a father figure. They even have their mother's last name. So that name, right? I was talking to Angry Man on another show, and he said something very profound to me. He said, women lack philosophy. And I thought about that for hours after he said it. And I realized that your philosophy, your code, your mantra usually comes from your father and the other men in your family. That code that you're living by to work and get up every day and realize that you're doing it for the name that you've been given, that attitude comes from the men in your family. So I'll just give some of my standards. Like, I have a father, you know, I was raised by my father, my mother and my father, but you know, he was there guiding me all the time. And that really hurt the women I was dating when I was young. And I was really like, you know, I guess you can say wild. I went to an HBCU, so you know I love Black women, but I've never wavered from my standard as far as a woman that I would introduce to my parents or my mother, you know, anything like that. A lot of women, no surprise here, got offended when they realized I don't date women with children. And a woman she kept inserting herself back into my life, knowing that this was my standard. Like, well, you know, it could just be, you know, some bedtime fun. And I'm like, okay, you're going to get emotional again when I tell you I don't really date women with children. And one day we just had it out. She's like, why? Why don't you? I said, that is not how I saw my life. I want my children to be in my likeness. All of the drama that's been on display for me my whole life, right? With all my Black friends, and your baby father wants to show up and he has issues over here, or you cheating on me with him because you never stop having feelings for him. I can absolve myself of all of that by not messing with a woman with children. That is probably the first standard I ever developed when I started dating with intent, is not to date a woman with children. Not saying anybody else should, but when we talk about standards, I know personally that's a lot of men's personal standards. So that's one of mine. Another one for me is I don't date, and this may be a surprise again, I don't date uneducated women. And like, I know women value their education, but I value something different in it. I don't like incompetence necessarily. And an educated woman who's able to dedicate herself to something is very attractive, always has been to me. Right. So I didn't
Well,
want
it shows discipline.
discipline. Exactly. I tell people all the time, I would definitely smash the girls that were loud and doing all that type of, but I was in love with those nerdy girls. I mean, the girls carrying their books from the library. You find them in the same spot in the library almost every single day. Those are the girls I was going after. So I've always been a sapiosexual and extremely attracted to that. So I adopted it as a standard. No uneducated women, no women who aren't well spoken and can't carry themselves and present themselves well in a sophisticated situation. So that was a no-no for me. Understands the order of family. If I ask a woman a question such as why do men lead, and I hear some bullshit, it's a no-go. Right? So men definitely.
Well, I think that's a question that you're going to get that 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get a good, clear answer, because if it's a woman from the United States, if they didn't come from a 2-family household, it's probably not something that they've seen or has been a part of the discussion, within the broader part of the extended family.
So, I'll share something a bit personal. My wife actually she didn't get, like you said, she didn't grow up with her father primarily. He wasn't there for a long time, but she gave a good answer still, nonetheless, in my opinion. She said she doesn't know because she wasn't taught. And that's what I mean about an educated woman. But she said, I can make the distinction that homes where the men lead are, especially where children are involved, are the better situation. So that's what I meant. Like, it's like, oh, okay. She's, you said it last week. She's coachable. She's actually willing to learn why this is important because it wasn't modeled for her. So that was extremely attractive to me as well. And rare, because I'd never gotten that answer before.
And that's a good example, because it's the same example as to why Black men who have now attained a certain success in life that are saying, you know what? I want a woman that have these standards, can respect me, and don't have children and want to be a wife.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that grown men or men who are brought up in single family homes led by females are coming to that same conclusion? Like your wife said, I didn't experience it, but I know what that could be like.
Yeah.
And I would prefer that as a choice. See, people can transcend their environment. And I think a lot of times, most of us would prefer people not transcend their environment. Let me just comment on natural, what's that, Empress? Mr. Lee says he's seeing the world and living it up alone. Well, I will tell you this. I've always been a single-minded person from I was a boy. I always did things the way I wanted to. Anyone in my family can tell you that. I mean, even to this day, my family always know when they get a phone call from me, I'm in a different country, someplace else, some part of the world they never expect me to go, and they probably have never been to. That's really just been the kind of man I am. I make my own choices. I don't ask for permission, and I don't need anyone's points of view to allow me to make a decision that I've already come to. Tawan, GC, thanks for the super chat, $10. I don't know where all these clowns come from tonight, Mr. Lee, but you are respected. Thank you very much, brother. The thing is that I think as Sage Talk people become more aware of the show, guys will come in to test. I think it's always good when people are ribbing you, it's because you're doing something right. And if you're never challenged, you never become strong. So I'm a man with very thick skin. I'm not emotional. So there's really little anyone can say to take me off my square, as you guys would say. I've been a teacher for 8 years, high school. So I think if anyone could really challenge you to get you to come out of your posture, position, become uncomfortable, high school teenage kids can do that. I've seen them trigger many female teachers. One thing I never do is I never allow anyone to play me out of position. I understand the dynamics of psychology and, more importantly, manipulation. And I know people like to just pull on your strings, and that's, it could be just fun, or it could be just engaging for the chat, or it could be deliberate, to say something. In any case, it really doesn't bother me. I think the fact that they're here, I think it's a good thing. They're paying attention to the show. And that's keeping my numbers up. Much appreciated.
Yep.
Okay, another one. He says, sad, so self-absorbed. He hasn't paused one moment to let the doctor talk. Well, you do realize the name of the show is Sag Talk. I mean,
that
just
was,
in case all your cylinders weren't clicking, just want
that's
to
a good
remind
one.
you.
That was a good one, Mr. Lee. You deserve a sound effect after that one. All right. So the
Yeah.
last one I had on my list of standards that I could pull from, before the time I was married, of course, was this is actually the most important one to me because a lot of my previous girlfriends failed this test. You have to have maintained connections and friendships over a long period of time. I adopted that right as I met my wife, or I'm sorry, reconnected with my wife. So just to say, like, do you still have those friends that you have? How does your family view you? Do your sisters, your siblings like you? Are you a coveted jewel of the family, or you're somebody that people would rather stay away from? I really encourage people to understand that that is extremely important. You loving someone, that honeymoon phase can last a very long time.
Yes, it
And
can.
I caution people because I realize that everybody's out here trying to marry a stranger rather than somebody they know well. I would personally advise people to go back into their past and find somebody you knew from high school or middle school. Those are the people you know well, and you can vouch for their character and how much, their family likes them. But, people are out here trying to vet strangers. And if you don't do it well enough, like with these standards that I'm talking about, you're going to just find somebody. Like, I think one of the biggest things when you talk to men and women, when they're filing for divorce, they'll say, the person just switched on me. They just flip-flopped and became a different person. That's because you didn't know them well or how other people in their life perceive them. So I think that's extremely important.
But I guess I'm going to play Dusto in this particular response
Let's do it.
because, sometimes we are not always fortunate to meet someone from where we grew up in life to be able to choose a mate. But I will say this, that in my experience, the woman that I chose to have married, I knew her since she was 13. And we didn't get married until she was 24. I knew her mother, I knew her father. Her brother and I went to school together. I knew all her cousins. I knew her whole family. She introduced me to her dad because she wanted to get to know me. I was older than her by about 6 years. So I was 18 and I already had a girlfriend. And first, she introduced me to her mom. I was cordial, said hello. She told me it was okay to talk to her daughter. I told her, fine, no problem. I ignored her still. Weeks later or months later, her cousin came and brought me up the block. Hey, she want to introduce you to her dad. And that time, they prepared a whole dinner. They invited me to dinner, sat down with her father. And her father is a giant. I mean, this guy's like 6'4", steel worker, so he's big hands. But a really nice guy. And we talked. And that's when he said, Lee, I give you permission to talk to my daughter. If you want to talk to her anytime, you can't take her out because she's too young, but you guys can talk because she really likes you. So it wasn't until that point, maybe a year or so later, we started kind of talk friendly, but I never really talked to her alone. It was always friends around, her cousins and whatnot, until she turned 16. That's when we kind of like started to talk more and stuff like that. And I knew her, and I knew her brother, and I knew her mom. And I would say this, 5 years into our marriage, she flipped.
Wow.
5 years into our marriage, she flipped after my second son, or our second son. So, I have a perspective that people can show a different side of themselves later.
Oh, yeah.
Or something can change about them later. And you can grow up with them and know them. I mean, literally, because I told my mom before I moved out the neighborhood, when I was about 19, when I was going to college, I told my mom, if there's any woman from this neighborhood where I grew up with, it would be her. Now, I'm not going to say her name because it's irrelevant, and my mom knew who she was. So That's someone that I knew in the back of my mind was the only woman that I grew up with in my neighborhood of all the people that I know. And I am well known in the community where I come from in Harlem. People know me. That was the only woman I can say that from where I grew up that I would choose to be a wife. And it just so happens that 10 years later, when I was 29, making 30, we got married. And I thought that was the best thing that I ever did in terms of choice and decision. I got a childhood friend that turned into a girlfriend. We were friends for years, almost 10 years. So if there was anyone that I could say that I knew as it pertained to a woman, that would have been my wife. I didn't know another girl more than I knew her.
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So there are situations where those things do turn around. They're different. Where you can you could pull that one short straw.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say, you know, that's why I was saying to Dustor earlier about, you know, you can be with someone for 20 years and then one day they just change their mind about the relationship and you never know what could be the reasons. And we on the outside can say, well, she married you for your money if you're rich. And if you're not rich, well, she didn't want to stay with you because you were broke or you didn't put down the D well. But if you didn't put down the D well, why was she there for 20 years? Nobody stick around for 20 years. So, you know, we can always quarterback Monday morning quarterback after the fact. And I think sometimes that's something that we in this space, we don't always give men the same latitude that we give women for when a marriage failed. Because I know when my marriage failed, everybody asked me, what did you do, Lee?
Yeah.
That was the common question. You know, and I didn't drag her name through the mud. I'm not that kind of guy. My standards is different. It's like she told the kids things for me and my sons not to have a good relationship. To this day, I've never discussed my relationship with neither of my sons. I would never say anything to make my son disrespect their mother or see them in a negative way. She would have to do that, or someone in her family would have to tell them that. I would never do that. That's my standard. So that is a sacrifice that I have to bear. Because if I wanted to, I could have told my kids dirt about my wife. But why would I do that? To mess up their head? See, some people are vindictive. That's why last week I was talking about your character. If your wife or your girlfriend or whoever you're dealing with, if she goes out and sleep with someone behind your back, and then you go out and sleep with someone to make her pay or vice versa, how can you then use that as a reason to justify why you break up or anything? Because you did the same thing she did. Now she made you just like her, or he made you just like him. I don't allow people's other behavior to influence me. Just because you did something negative, I'm not going to go and do something negative to pay you back. I've lived long enough to see in life that what we call karma or justice or God or the cycle of life, that people get their just comeuppance. If you live long enough, you see people suffer. You don't always have to be the one to put the knife in and turn it. Life has a way of making people pay. And I think part of my perspective that I try to bring to this conversation on Sage Talk is to kind of lift our standards up better so we are not so tit for tat in how we deal with one another. Because we're very vindictive between one another. I don't see brothers going out there shooting cops that shoot black men. But step on a brother's shoe, look at him the wrong way, say something the wrong way, look at his girl, you end up in the grave.
Yep.
We are so easy triggered to rectify justice on one another. Sometimes that's not real justice. It's just insecurities.
Yep.
Insecurities. I remember walking down the streets in New York. New York is a cold city. And sometimes you passing another person, another brother, and you just, mean mugging each other. That's just the way. Some guys can look at you and ain't no beef. Some guys get intimidated and want to, what you looking at? What you looking at? I'm like, I'm looking at you. What's your problem?
Yep.
Like sometimes guys are insecure. So they're intimidated just by a look. I'm like, you're a man, I'm a man. We should be able to stare each other down and walk past each other. If I didn't say nothing to you and you didn't say nothing to me, we cool. But a lot of brothers is emotional. So if they see you look at them hard, they feel some kind of way emotional, and then they want to trigger it into something else. And I find it by me having these talks, I try to get brothers to have a little bit more patience with one another.
Yeah.
Don't be so quick to pull the trigger. Don't always assume that someone means you bad intent. And don't be so always willing to take revenge if you don't have to. If, when I trained in martial arts, my sensei used to always say, we train hard because we never want to be able to fight. But if we have to, we are the one that's walking away. And the thing is that part of your training was to be able to avoid the confrontation. Just because you can knock a motherfucker out don't mean you should.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of time we tend to be so combative with one another. We're mean to one another. We're disrespectful to one another. I see it a lot. That's why even when the trolls come in here and they say things, it's like water off a duck's back. I don't really pay no attention because I know there's something lacking in them, why they're reacting the way they are. It's not about me because they don't know me. I'm an old dude. I don't have nothing to prove. I ain't a gangster. I never was a gangster. I never promoted myself as a gangster. The man that I've been straightforward, and it's laid out video after video. But I think a lot of times we as men, we don't give each other grace.
Mm-hmm.
And in relationships, we definitely don't give each other grace.
May I say this? Where I live at right now, there are times where people would give a head nod, to say hi to them. And to me, this is a sign of, try not to have beef with anybody or anything like that. It's a community thing. Have any of you seen something like that?
Say again?
But where I live, we would give like a nod to each other, saying hi to each other and everything like that. This is a symbol of trying to not to have beef with anybody or anything like that. This is what I try to express all the time. And I was wondering, have you seen neighborhoods or areas that are like that?
Well, I mean, when I grew up in Harlem, that's the way it was. Brothers, it was around the Black Power movement, big afros and bell-bottom pants. So, we as a community was well connected. Everybody knew each other. Getting shot, nobody got shot in the neighborhood. It wasn't until like going into the 80s and the crack era when people really started to get gunned down and the drug game just got way out of control. But I think even in the 90s, in the circles where I moved, there were many people that, were brothers. They were very cordial to one another out and about. I think after 2000, I don't know, 2005, 2010, things have really changed. And that's one of the things that I enjoy living here in Central America. I first went to Panama and I rented a house right on the seaside not too far from the canal. I could see the canal from the house. And I enjoyed living there. And I was there for like a month or so. But then my sister-in-law brought me to Honduras. And when I came here, I just fell in love with the place. And the people are so friendly. I mean, that's one thing that I think brothers, as they travel overseas, not just for the females, but just for the welcoming way in which people interrelate with you. Like when I walk down the street, I will hear, "Hey, profe, maestro," or Mr. Lee. Everyone knows me. I don't know all of them, but they know me. And they say hello. And strangers, if they don't know you, they just say, they may say, in general, if you're an older guy like me, they would say, "Jefe, hey, jefe," right? Or sometimes they would say, "Hey, primo," which is like cousin, right? But it's a natural way that people just interact. And I like that. Like, I'm not here because of Cooch. That has never been my excuse in life. I'm here because I like the life. I've worn a suit for 22 years. I've worked 16, 14-hour days, sometimes 6 days a week. I've made a lot of freaking money. But one day, the day before my trip on vacation, I got a serious cramp in my stomach and ended up in emergency. And the doctor told me, if I don't make a change in my life, I'll be dead in less than 5 years. And that's when I said, I got to move from Wall Street and do something else where I can have a better quality of life. I don't want to retire and then 2 years later I'm dead. I want to just live and enjoy my life. So that's my purpose and why I'm here. I'm enjoying smelling the roses. I come back to the US once in a while, visit my family and hook up with friends, but I don't make it a regular thing. I'm doing me. And I've lived a life and I've did a lot for a lot of people. Trust me, if I was to collect the markers on people who owe me money, it's way over 100 G's. Trust me. And I'm fortunate that I had it like that at that point in my life to be generous. Because it's good to be generous. So, that's just choices that we make. And from a perspective looking 40 years back in my life, I can tell you, being selective, having a standard, it eliminates a lot of problem out of your life. There are a lot of chicks I could have got to that I grew up with that I could be having baby mama dramas now. But I don't have none of that. I have none of it. And I think by the time you get to your mid to late 50s or your 60s, you want, as a man, if you have worked, not if you've been a bum, but if you have worked, you want to be able to relax. Mm-hmm. You want the stress of the grind from you at 21 to maybe 59 is over. And if you're putting in anything more than that, it's just for your own self-satisfaction. It's not to satisfy anybody else's needs. And I think as Black men, we have to start managing our life better.
Mm-hmm.
You won't want to die from a bullet. I like to see Black men die of old age. Like, let that be a new thing. Black men dying of old age, living to 85, 90, as opposed to dying at 30, 40, 50. That's crazy. You know how often when I used to teach, my students would say, Mr. Lee, you're such a smart guy. Why are you in this country? Why are you not in New York? See, when you're running from poverty, New York or the US is your destination.
Mm-hmm.
When poverty is not your concern, you choose a quality of life. And I tell you, when I was in Panama, or if I'm in Costa Rica, or if I'm in Guatemala, or Nicaragua, or here in Honduras, there are more white people living outside of the United States in their retirement years than you would believe that are living good life.
I saw that in Costa Rica in the farmers market.
Absolutely.
It was crazy.
Farmers market out here, you could get your chicken fresh, killed, clean.
Like, I couldn't believe, well, it was just white vendors, and I was confused. Like, are you a tourist? Or they were like, no, we live here, husband and wife. You know, they were like, nah, we've been here 7 years. You know, we bought a duplex, we Airbnb one, we live in the other. I was like, wow, never would have guessed.
No, I think, quality of life is not always the most modern things. And I think, like one of my talks I had a few weeks ago, I talked about not having a microwave. Like, even when I was married and I lived in the US, I never had a microwave. I don't believe in microwave food. When my wife or my girlfriend that I live with, they make food fresh. Like, sometime if I didn't get home till 11 o'clock at night, my woman, even if she's laying down watching TV, she'll be like, you hungry? You want something to eat? I'd be like, no, I'm all right. She'll get up in the kitchen anyway and make me a sandwich or make me a salad. Be like, here, you got to eat something. You've been working for 16 hours.
That's the dream life right there.
And the funny thing is, I've never lived with a woman or had a relationship with a woman that didn't know how to cook and clean and take care of a man. In this space, for me, when I hear these things, it's new. I don't know that.
So
all my girlfriends were from New York. They may not have been originated in New York. I've dated women from St. Lucia, Jamaica, Guyana, Trinidad, Dominican Republic. I've had women everywhere in New York. And I never had the problems that I hear these guys talk about. But I mean, it's a reality for them now.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to address the now.
It's, it's a standard that I wish more Black men would have for themselves. And it's very telling as to how Black men begin to defect and start to entertain women from other cultures. Because I'll say this, about my personal life. Every once in a while when you get on these platforms and you talk, Black women will ask you, what do you have against Black women? Well, I don't have anything against Black women. I'm Nigerian. So the best woman, the image of the woman that I have in my mind, that is the most, submissive, the most catering to her man, all of that, gets up and cooks, as you said, asks if you're hungry, had you eaten, your children are always taken care of, bathed, clothed, well-groomed, is essentially an African woman or a Black woman. So it's like, to me, it's highly offensive when I see people in the likeness of my mother, my grandmother, my aunties. They do it the best. So you said that's the way I like to tell, some of my wife's friends is a black woman can do this. Like, you're of African descent. Even those of you that are of Native American descent, your descendants did this the best of anyone in history. Y'all took care of this particular situation better than any woman in history. So it's highly offensive to have the opposite showing out in society now. And I take that as when I watch young black men taking a likeness to women in other cultures, because nobody ever thinks that these men actually care about the way that they're treated. The first time you have a black boy who has only known, people cursing at him and a dysfunctional household, women asking him to get them stuff, whether his mama, big mama, all that type of stuff, to a woman catering to you. Do you want something? It's almost like I've seen men be like almost deny it. Like, no, I don't want anything. Please don't put yourself at a for me, he's like, no, that's the way that woman is. She's naturally nurturing. She's naturally catering to you. So just accept the gesture. You know what I mean? So naturally, men will always want to gravitate toward that and be around that more. So I wish, I really want men to develop that standard that they care about the way that they're treated. If no woman wants to be undesired, so as soon as black men,
I would say this: no person wants to be undesired, men and women.
Yep, absolutely. And once we make the behavior, the behaviors we do not desire undesirable, and let them know that we won't settle for any less, you do these things or we won't mess with you, then the women will have no choice but to change. Because
No, go ahead.
No, I was done.
Okay, you're absolutely right. I think men setting a standard will make women change their behavior if the men that they want change the standard, because the behavior that we have today, and Carlisle Tom says, I think it's a new age thing, to speak to his comment, like the stripper type culture and the way women dress, wear makeup, and sexually promote themselves. That was a culture that really developed from men and then promoted through rap music. And now it has become part of the common, has been woven into the society as part of the common culture. But that started as a lower culture behavior where men used to go to be entertained by women. And now women are promoting that as the natural way of behaving in the broader society. Now, Natural Empress, I'm not sure if this is a comment that's pertaining to me. And with regard to what I had said earlier, says, I'm sure he wouldn't admit to such a thing publicly, asterisk soul. So I'm not sure if that's referring to something else. Just think of it in terms of living in a community. You know the person, you didn't engage until they came of age.
I think speaking to you.
Yeah, when I was 19, and I think you can go back to other videos, I've stated this. When I was 19, I moved out of Harlem. And I chose to move out of Harlem because my environment, my friends, they would have been an obstacle to my career objectives. Back then, my buddies would call me up because most of the time I did my studying at night, 10, 11 o'clock at night. Had a lot of engineering homework, so it's most quiet. So my buddies would call me up and ask me, hey, We got some girls over at the house. Back then, the weed was Sesamia or Buddha. That's what we smoked back then. Thai stick, champagne, Heineken's, whatever, right? And from time to time, I did participate. But I knew if I stayed in the neighborhood with my friends who, after high school, they weren't really doing much but hanging, that would have deterred me or derailed me from achieving what I wanted. So at 19, I left Harlem and I moved on with my life. And the girl that later became my wife, over time, we just lost contact. And it wasn't until, I think the last time we spoke was when she was 16, but that was the last time we spoke. And we didn't speak again until she was 20. So if that was pertaining to me, no. Of course, I wouldn't jeopardize myself in terms of engaging with a younger person than myself because of my age. But I was mindful as a very young man, and I was very self-disciplined as a man. There were many women I could have had sex with as a teenager that I chose not to have sex with because I didn't think they would make a good mother if I got them pregnant. And when I was in my teenage years, that was a standard for me back then. I was very selective with women. Now, when I became older and I made a lot of money and I was hanging, my selection dropped. Granted, I didn't use that as a bar all the time. But definitely when I was in a good state of mind, I was very selective with the woman I chose to have sex with and to make a relationship with. And no, I did not have sex with my wife before she was, actually it was on the birthday when she was 21. That was the first time we had sex, on her birthday. I was out of state working at a nuclear installation plant in Illinois and outside of Rockford in the county of Byron. Gerald would know what that is. If you're from Illinois, you would know what that is. And she called me up one day and we started talking. And I said, hey, your birthday is coming up next month, right? And she said, yeah. So I came back. I told her I'll come back and celebrate her birthday with her. And when I came back, she was in love with me for all those years. So for her birthday night, we did the do. And she was 21. And when she was 24, we got married. And that's the story. And she could tell you that, and anybody else in her family that's alive that would know the story from back then, they could tell you. But no, I don't have nothing to hide about that. See, I've always lived my life by standards. That's why I can speak of it in the bold way in which I do, because it's not nothing that I have to create. It's me. When I left Wall Street, I had at least 30 or 40 clients calling me, ask me, Lee, where are you going? Just tell us the firm, we'll transfer the account. I told them I was leaving Wall Street. They said, well, we like the company. Who should we stay with if we're going to stay there? And I gave them a few names. Work with him, or work with him. They'll take care of you. That's me, bro. I'm straight up. And if you ever meet me in person, you'll see that. One thing I have is a great reputation, personally and in business. Hands down. So I just wanted to address that because I think, and that's why I think standards is important, because even the best people who may be my staunchest supporters may find it difficult for a man to have standards and not interact with a minor when he knows that's a minor. because we have people like R. Kelly and others who do it. You have to set the standard for yourself, what lines you won't cross. See, it's not always about what someone is willing to do or give you. It's what lines you won't cross. You think I don't know? She could have, if I wanted to, you don't think I could have had sex with her at 14 or 15 or 16? Of course I could have. Besides the fact I had a girlfriend at the time and she was fine as hell, I didn't have a need to. That's one. And I wouldn't because, number one, I know my family that I come from. Again, your family name is important. Two, I know her family, her mother, her father, her brothers, her cousins. I know the whole family. She wasn't just no strag in the street. She come from an intact mother and father family. I have nothing bad to say about my ex-wife other than the fact that we broke up. I can't trash her because she has a good reputation as a woman and as a mother. That's for sure. And the way, just because things don't always turn out the way you plan, however that might be, you don't have to change your standard. Be the man that you are. Raise your standards and let other people come up to you as opposed to you going down to them. It's easy to be down in the dirt. Everybody's down in the dirt.
I can remember when my dad told me once that, if I get a girl pregnant, I'm going to have to take care of her. And I always, consider that a standard because, when I was a teenager, I'd seen so many teenage girls with baby bumps. And, that really scared me. So I was so scared to participate in, any sexual, activity, because of that. And also, I had standards, but in my 4 relationships, I did not live up to those standards. And I see how important standards are because they were all bad experiences. After that 4th one, I said, no more. It's time for me, to look for somebody that I want, instead of letting people come to me, with their interests and just taking them in, So yeah, I see the importance of standards.
The thing is with standards is that they follow you through your life, especially if you develop them when you're young. Like, if you wait until you start to make money to have standards, you will never have standards. Because standards is like, you don't wake up one day at 21 and become a basketball star or a football star. That happens for discipline and training, maybe from little league at 9, 10, 11 years old. And over time, you excel. It's something that you build within you. Standards are no different. Those are just mental training. And a lot of people, we only understand the discipline for sports, but we don't understand the discipline that makes a community. And men have to have standards to hold down the women and to hold down the family. If we change our standards, the woman over time will have no choice but to change, or we'll leave them behind and choose other women. It's just that simple. Because in the end, though it's the woman that offers up sex, We are the one that pay for their life. Understand that. That's why it doesn't matter how much money a woman make. She always want a man that makes more money than she does. Because men pay for women's lives. It's always been that way, and it will always be that way. That is nature. And you can't outprogram nature. How many times you've seen a sidewalk paved over and 3 or 4 months later you see grass growing from between the cracks of the sidewalk? Because that's nature. You can't cover up nature. You can try to suppress it, but you can't stop it. And discipline and standards is what makes a person, a family, and a community, and a good name. And right now, the one thing, well, maybe not the one thing, but one of many things that we lack as Black people is a standard and name. We don't put respect on family name. Most of the family names that we know ain't shit to stand on. They don't have a reputation. Actually, the only reputation they may have is killing people or dealing drugs. Other than that, they don't really have a reputation or a standard. The standard goes down. It doesn't go up. As men, we need to do that. We need to change that.
Right. Well, listen, I appreciate you letting me come up here because I've learned a lot from this conversation. And when I come on the panel, I do get my input, but most of the time I will learn from them. So I really do appreciate it. I gotta get up in the morning. So again, thank you.
Not a problem. I appreciate you for coming, checking in, coming up on a panel and being a part of the discussion. I definitely appreciate everyone who was in the chat, all of you who dropped your super chats. Appreciate the contribution. And for those who have challenged points of views, whether it's towards me or others within the conversation in the chat, pushing back is necessary. I think it's always important to prove things. And the only way you get to prove things is by putting it to the test. So those of you who want to put the challenging questions or even in some cases accusations, in all cases, I think in the end, it will prove that we as Black people, and particularly Black men, we can stand the test. And if you need me to show you how to do it, tune in every Sunday and I'll lead you to the way. I'll show you how to be a man of standards, how to take all the pushback necessary to have a breakthrough. Because I think that's what we need as men. We need to have a breakthrough. And I've been there. So I can talk from experience, not from observation. Thank you guys for checking in. See you next week, 3 o'clock. I expect the show to be on time. Have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. Lee, checking out.